Thanks for joining in the Pivotal Podcast, where we talk about young adults with young adults. All right, welcome to episode 1 of the Pivotal Podcast. I am here with, I'm trying to figure, yes, here she is. I'm here with Andrea Sawtell. We are not actually in a kitchen. This is not my home, but
a lot fancier than my home. So
I would like that kitchen. That's a nice kitchen. Look, we got this over there. We got this nice stairwell, and that goes who knows where. I'm sure it's Lux, wherever that stairwell goes. I'm sure it's beautiful. And then we've got hold on, I'm going the wrong way. Then we got that chalkboard over there. We got some
that chalkboard's nice.
Important messages. Yeah.
Although I'm confused about the blue thing behind your head. I think it's a coffee.
I think it's a coffee maker. Like it says Zoom coffee.
Oh, it does say Zoom coffee.
Yeah, that's Zoom coffee. Well, anyway, we're going to be serving up some Zoom coffee together. This is Andrea Sawtell, and I'm Jerry Varner, and we are starting the Pivotal Podcast. So for episode 1, all we really want to do, and just full disclosure, not only are we not in the same kitchen, we're not even in the same state. So Andrea is going to introduce herself. By the end of our episode, I'm going to get it good. I'm going to know exactly which way to go. Andrea's going to introduce herself, and I'll share a little bit about me, but we wanted to just introduce ourselves and tell you what this podcast is about and why we think that this conversation about ministering with young people is an important conversation. And we do not want this to be like, come and listen to us and we'll tell you what to do. This is really just a journey, and we want to go for a walk, and we want you to come along on that walk. And hopefully in the very near future, perhaps even our very next episode, we are going to have a real live young adult with us to just kind of put stuff on the table and talk about life as a young adult in 2024, where we are in our culture now. What does that mean socially? What does it mean mentally? What does it mean financially? What does it mean spiritually? And all of those things. So anyway, I have already talked too much, so I'm going to turn it over to Andrea. Andrea, tell us just who you are and where you are and why you agreed with me to just kind of jump in on this fun experiment.
Yeah, well, I am Andrea. You introduced me. So I'm outside of Philadelphia. So I am in the Lansdale area. Currently, my house is in North Wales.
I noticed a few minutes ago, like when you put your arm up, you have Phillies on your.
I do have
Phillies, but on your sleeve,
Oh, yes, somebody gave it to me. This is like a huge sweatshirt. It's a fancy sweatshirt that I did not buy for myself, but
yeah.
I have said I will be a Phillies fan, but I cannot be an Eagles fan. So probably everybody in Philadelphia just stop listening.
You're not obnoxious enough to be an
I'm a diehard Chiefs fan.
Okay.
For a very long time.
That's right. So. Are you from Kansas City?
No, but I lived there, and I waited on some players and coaches from the Chiefs. That's how I became a fan.
All right. Okay. We'll allow it.
But I'm here in Lansdale at Emmanuel Church, and we've been here, it'll be 3 years in January. I came out of youth ministry, 18 years of youth ministry, to take this job, which is, I am technically young adult next gen pastor, which means I work with young adults, and then I oversee like 0 to 35 in our church. So I moved my family here. I love it here. It's been a total blessing, but there's also been a major learning curve because I have never been a young adult pastor before. So, I'm invested in this and interested. Jerry, I'm excited to do this with you because we have said before, we kind of do ministry similar. I think we can learn from each other. We're lifelong learners. And we also have no idea what we're doing most of the time. So, I'm excited to talk about young adults and so many things. I don't know.
Yes. First of all, I grew up as a Phillies fan, so I want to make sure that is a connection back in the 80s, because I'm kind of an older dude. So back in the 80s, the days of Mike Schmidt and Von Hayes and Juan Samuel and all the heyday of the Phillies. So I full disclosure, I'm not really following the Phillies right now, but deep in my bones, I have a love for the Philadelphia Phillies. Yeah. So because I grew up in South Jersey, and of course we don't have a team of our own, but Philadelphia was the closest thing. So
These are
yeah,
things that I do not know about you. I did
yeah,
not
yeah.
grow up
I
in
grew
South
up
Jersey.
in Cape May, New Jersey, the very bottom tip of the state. That's where I grew up.
And no
All
one loved
my
Cape May.
yeah, yeah. Cape May's it was a great place to grow up. You said that you used the term lifelong learner and student. Years and years ago, our then executive pastor Wynn came into my office, and I don't remember why he did, but I remember saying these words to him. In kind of looking back, I was a little arrogant. It was a little cocky statement that I made, but I didn't mean it to be. But I was just saying. I said to him, I think I can be the last student ministry pastor that you hire for a really long time because I want to continue to learn and grow and change. Like, I want to grow with the ministry, not just like, hey, this is my bag of tricks. And when I run out of my bag of tricks, I'm kind of done. Like, I want to continue to morph and grow as a leader, as a person, as a pastor, as a Christian. So I feel like that's the best spot that you can be in. So I appreciate so much the fact that you said that we don't really know what we're doing at any given moment. I think we do have. So you have been, okay, you've been in ministry for, it's got to be over 20 years then. Tell me how many
Yeah.
years total?
I mean, well, I guess I'm going on 21 of
Okay.
like full-time paid ministry.
Yes,
And
yes.
then prior to that, I was a volunteer
Okay.
and did a lot of volunteer ministry
Yeah.
and youth ministry. But yeah, I mean, I've been in it for 2 decades, which is
Yeah.
crazy because
Yeah.
I'm old.
So between the two of us, we have half a century of experience of just loving young people. So
Yeah.
I think that in and of itself, it gives us a kind of a well to go to in terms of like just, I don't know, philosophy or ideas or experiences, that you and I have had that might be beneficial to other people. And we are not like we promise there's not going to be any sales pitch at the end. We're not going to upsell anything. This you don't sign up for a course. We're not offering. We're just
Oh,
like, hey, this is how we have lived our lives, and we want to be able to just have a conversation about what it means for us to pour into the young generation.
yeah.
Um, so that's Andrea. Like I said, I grew up in Cape May, New Jersey. I've been in ministry since 1995, so I'm closing in on 30 years in full-time ministry. But just like Andrea, I have only officially been a young adult pastor since January of 2022. So 2.5 years, maybe going on 3 years. So I still feel kind of relatively new to young adult ministry, like officially, like per se. So, but the longer I'm in young adult ministry, and I bet you feel the same way, Andrea, the longer I'm in young adult ministry, the more in love with it I am. And there's specific reasons for that, but then there's also reasons that I'm kind of like still discovering. A long time ago, as a student ministry pastor, and just so everyone knows, when I say that, I'm meaning specifically middle school and high school. So I'm kind of a pastor to that age group, 6th to 12th grade. A long time ago, I learned that a really bad metric for that kind of ministry is how many people you get to an event. That's not a good metric to use. The metric that I have developed over the years is where is that young person 10 years after they graduate high school? Where are they in their faith? Where are they in their love for Jesus? So if I can see them and kind of where they not wander off to, but where they kind of end up as a young adult or as an adult, that's a much better metric to see how like the student ministry did. Because really in student ministry, you're not just like giving them something to do, you're really just kind of planting seeds and trying to lay the foundation of in tandem with the parents and what they're doing and all that stuff. So when you're walking with young adults, you're literally seeing your own report card, not your own report card, but you're seeing like how did that student ministry impact them now that they're out kind of in the cliche expression of like the real world,
Yeah.
so they're out of the bubble of high school and now they're kind of making their own decisions and they get to choose if they go to church, where they go to church, what their faith looks like and all that stuff. So to me, that's a much better metric.
Yeah, and it is funny. I mean, to think because you've got a foot in each of those two worlds right now.
Yeah,
I oversee our youth pastor at our church, and so I see what he's doing, but I'm not in the depths of it.
right.
And it is interesting all the time. I'm like, ooh, if I could look back now that I work with young adults, if I could look back, like how would I do that different? What
Yeah.
would I do different? Because
Yeah.
it is a game changer when you're watching them in adulthood.
Yeah.
I think it makes you look and think through a different lens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool you have like a foot in each of those places.
Yeah. I love it. It's exhausting, but I
Yeah,
love it to,
that is true.
to have that. Yeah. And I've watched my own passion grow, especially over these last 2 years, my own passion grow for young adults. And just to be, this is kind of a funny little, you've learned this about young adults, and we did a retreat together a couple of years ago up in Pennsylvania. One of the things that I love, more on the lighthearted side, is I can be the first one to leave an event.
Yes.
And I'm
Yes.
like, I don't have to stay around for any of you people to get picked up. You're just like totally
So
independent.
true. So true. I
So
know.
yeah,
You go to bed, you're like, all right,
right, right.
girl.
Yeah, do whatever you want. You're adults now.
So true. That is a
Yeah,
bonus right there.
yeah. All right. So let's talk next about like why do you think that the conversation that we're trying to cultivate here, why do you think it's an important one? Because I think that it could help young adults themselves, and I also think it could help adults and leaders who want to support or invest in or encourage young adults. So why do you think that this is an important conversation right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important conversation for a lot of different reasons. I mean, one, like young adults need to be heard.
Yeah.
And I think from an older adult perspective, like sometimes from the older adult perspective, they think that like young adults don't want anything to do with me. Like, why would my voice matter?
Mhm.
And from a young adult perspective, sometimes I think it's this, no one understands me.
Yeah.
You don't understand what I'm feeling. You don't understand what I'm going through. But at the end of the day, I think there's this desire for mentorship and to be mentored and to be heard and to listen. And so finding like the means to be able to create space for that, I think matters.
Mhm.
Um, I think young adults are some of the most interesting and I don't know. I think there are people we can learn from. Like I just sat down from I was across from a young adult who's doing the same job as me, but is like 30 doing my job.
Yeah.
And I just sat across from him and I was like, I have so much to learn from you. Like I feel like I can learn so much from you. And I think he felt mutual from my standpoint too. So in a lot of ways, like I think there's a lot of learning to be done like between multiple generations.
Yeah.
Um, I also think the reality, like statistically speaking, the overall church at large, and I'm not saying your church or my church or a specific church, but the church at large has not done a great job at like retaining young people.
Mhm.
We've seen a lot of young people walk away from the church for numerous reasons,
Yeah.
which I think we're going to talk about and we're going to hear some of those stories on this podcast. But I think it's a wake up call to say like young people matter. And
Mhm.
so part of coming alongside of them, it isn't just creating a young adult program. That's probably one of the things that like I've been most surprised about is like coming into this job thinking like I'm just going to create something and like people are going to come to it.
Yeah.
I think it has way more to do with listening to their stories and meeting them where they're at. And
Mhm.
so creating space to actively listen and not respond, but to just listen to stories and to hear people like as to where they are.
Yeah.
The church at large needs to do a better job at that. We as leaders need to do a better job at that. So I think this creates space for that. And at the end of the day, like I believe in young people. I see them leading inside of our church. Like I believe in the passions and the things that God's placed inside of them. And so I want to see young people like on fire for the Lord, but also like leading kingdom things outside of the church too, in the
Yeah.
space that they're walking. So I don't know, that's some of the reasons
Yeah.
that
That's
I would see like need for.
yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Mhm.
And I remember well, I don't remember this because this was before my time, but the 60s and the 70s was kind of the emergence of student ministry, like ministry to teenagers in earnest in our culture. And I mean, and that comes from kind of the invention of adolescence from probably in the industrial era and what we have done as a culture, as a society to kind of create this thing called the teenage years. And so a few decades later, we actually started, the church in America actually started to create these positions of people who are shepherding these young people. And kind of in the same way, not 100%, but kind of in the same way, I kind of see where we are now in our history as a nation is an awakening to that young adult specific ministry. One of the pitfalls that I have found in young adult ministry so far, which is it's not inevitable, but I think it could be common, is that in our effort to minister to young adults, we inadvertently separate them from the church as a whole.
Yeah.
In an effort to kind of cater to their very specific needs and the life stage that they're in, we accidentally create this little niche and kind of like this little bubble, whereas we're ministering to them and maybe even effectively meeting the felt needs that they have, but we're also accidentally separating them from the church community as a whole. And that's a danger in student ministry. It's one that I have fallen into, and it's one that's kind of an ongoing thing that I have to watch out for in young adult ministry, because we do want to recognize where they are in their life stage, and then we do want to recognize their unique needs, but not to the extent where we cut them off from the community with 70-year-olds and 40-year-olds and 30-year-olds, So that's one of the observations that I have made. Have you experienced that same thing?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny on Sunday, we have like a young adult space that like is in between services, and a couple teenagers that just graduated that now are officially with our ministry. One of them said to me like, "So do you have like a youth group for young adults?" And I was
Yeah,
like, "Oh, no, we're not about like youth group 2.0."
yeah, yeah,
Um, and because it is like you're a part of the church at large. And I think, from a youth ministry standpoint, I think we could do a way better job at, at helping them to find their way among like intergenerational relationships. But I feel
yeah,
like for young adults, like they're not looking for like just another program.
yeah,
I think they want those relationships with people of all different stages of life. They want to feel like they're a part of something and they're not just like an addendum. And I think I've seen the power of young adults leading with people of all ages. And I think it's a powerful picture in the church, and it is kind of like a more sustainable like way of doing ministry and doing
yeah,
life inside the church. So yeah, I think when we start to silo out, and that's been, and I mean, I'll just say like, that's been a learning curve for me, because I
yeah,
think when I showed up at my job, I was like, I'm going to create a young adult service and everybody's going to come to it and we're going to
yeah.
do our own thing. And I was like, the more like I kind of like sat in that, the more I realized,
Mhm.
like, I mean, could that be a possibility as something we offer at some point? Sure. But
Yeah,
I felt like the Lord was like really pressing in, like, let's do that different.
yeah,
And so it's been cool to see like just different things form that aren't just
mhm,
like it's just a young adult ministry that's happening on its own.
yeah,
And I'm
mhm,
like learning that myself. I think
yeah,
that's a mindset shift. And again, for those of us coming out of youth ministry, it isn't youth ministry 2.0. Like it
yeah,
can't be. I think it's not sustainable.
yeah,
So
yeah. I agree. Um, One of the things that I want to differentiate for our podcast, for this little project that we're in, is we're not, our primary goal here is not to set up a how-to for young adult ministry. What I really envision is that we create kind of set a table, so to speak, for young adults to come and talk with us, and let's be real about the past. I have had enough conversations to recognize that whether you want to call it legitimate or illegitimate, there's enough of the deconstruction movement and the church hurt claims that young adults have, especially when they've grown up in the church, and that church culture collides with like pop culture in 2024 and the mindset of the church, in regards to really any topic you want to choose, collides with what seems to be an adversarial type of mindset in the church, and so they feel like they're in the middle, they're the rope on this tug of war, and the church wants to pull them one way and culture wants to pull them another way. So like my vision for this podcast is not like hey, let us teach you how to make a young adult ministry. That's not the primary thing. I mean, I think we're going to pick things up along the way, but I
Yeah.
would really love for us to just set a table where older folks who have a deep invested interest in ministering to young people and primarily young adults themselves can come and feel like, well, let me tell you what my angle is or what my perspective is, or here's my experience, and here's how I ended up as an atheist, or here's how I ended up as an ex-evangelical, or here's how I ended up I grew up in a Nazarene church or a Baptist church, and now I go to a Roman Catholic church because that's just scratches the itch that I have. I would love to have conversations like that and just be able to kind of like set the table for young adults to have a complete freedom to say, even among us and in our midst, to say, here's how you, youth pastor, here's how you screwed up, or here's how you dropped the ball, or like I feel
Yeah.
like I'm a big boy. Like I want to grow from hearing that.
Yes.
So anyway, that is that's a little bit of kind of what we would like to dream about and what we would like to have this podcast turn into.
Yeah, and let's just admit, like that's gonna look and feel messy.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I think there's some, I don't want to say scariness to that,
yeah,
but like we have to lay down our pride in
yeah,
listening to some of those stories.
yeah,
I mean, you and I, as we're like leading this, but also like as like active like people that are trying to seek and listen to young adults, like it's hard to hear some of that stuff. And at
yeah,
the same time, I think we have to come with like a posture of we're not here to fix it. We're not
mhm,
here to like defend ourselves or to give like advice and all that either. It is like actively listening. And I think when we actively listen, like we can learn a lot about that. That shapes further conversations. It shapes like how we do ministry. It shapes
yeah,
how we approach people. But
yeah,
yeah, I think there's some of that like, you know, when you hear somebody say, like, I would have never done that, and we're doing those things,
yeah.
it's hard to hear. So yeah, that's
Oops.
like from a perspective like what not to do, you know.
Yeah,
So, but I also think it's beautiful
yeah,
because you know I think yeah I think when we sit in the hard stuff like as a church in general, like
mhm,
it makes us better as
yeah,
like co-journeyers, as people like the church of Christ, the body of Christ, like and all of
yeah,
that. So
yeah.
yeah, so I'm excited and nervous at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah, but a good nerves, a good nervous.
Yeah, good nerves.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into this, but something that you just said just really made me think on, and I hope this doesn't sound like an indictment on the modern church era today, but it feels like what we're trying to do is package nice, neat things for people to experience or see or be a part of. Whereas when I look at Jesus' ministry, and I know that was first century, and I know we're, a couple thousand years later, so I know that there are differences, but it seems like the heart of Jesus was always drawn to the messiness of people's lives. And so that's what I want our podcast to be. I am not looking to create some nice, sweet, polished product that you can consume. Like I think the messiness is going to indicate that we're onto something good and onto something real and authentic. So yeah, we're not going to shy away from the messes of our own lives or of young people's lives or just the conversation in general. As you and I are talking, and I mean, we're going to wrap up here in just a second, but I want us to be able to kind of create some avenues or open doors for people to be able to interact with this whole thing, because I don't want it to be like the Jerry and Andrea show and we're going to talk some more and you're going to listen. I really want there to be avenues. So number one, obviously, that this is going to be on really wherever podcasts are found. The Pivotal Podcast is going to be there, and people can comment on that. People can rate on that. And I don't know a lot about the podcast world, but I think that ratings kind of help momentum and help the audience grow and stuff. But one of the things that I would love to have, and maybe even by our next episode, is to have some comments or maybe like things that we have said in this episode. People are like screaming at their radio or their smart device and they're like, I disagree, or I have a question, or, whatever. Like, I would love to tap into that, whatever that flow of, response is. So it would be great for us to have maybe even some comments. If there are any questions that we can kind of like wrestle around with. Neither Andrea nor I are like the old sage on the hill that has all the answers. I think we've laid that out pretty transparently. But we would love to enter into a conversation with anyone of any faith or non-faith or worldview or, wherever. Obviously, our focus is young adults, and so we would love to have conversations with young adults. But I'm kind of open, and I think we both are kind of open to, like, hey, if you want to come to the table and sit and talk with us, that would be awesome. So all that to say, wherever you're seeing this podcast, we can put it on YouTube, we can put it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and stuff. Feel free to leave a comment, and we'll be sure to check those places and check those comments, and maybe aggregate those things for the next time. And maybe we can have a little, we'll kick off with a comment or a question that somebody left for
Yeah.
episode 1. So yeah, that would be
Love
cool.
it.
Yeah, and at this point, Andrew, I think we decided we're going to shoot for monthly, like recording monthly. And I know that that's, I got to wait another month before the next episode, but we have you and I, and this is not like a puffed up chest statement. We just got a lot going on. And we also want to have enough time to get our guest and kind of get them, like set and prepped, and first of all, identify who they are and
Yes.
get them in here and give them some time as well. So anyway, any closing thoughts or anything that you want to share, Andrea?
Just I'm excited for this.
Yeah,
I think well, I've never done anything like this before. So
yeah,
I'm excited in hopes that like it's going to encourage some people
yeah,
and again, like help young adults feel heard and,
yeah,
help the church to learn from some of that. But like just, yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, just join in and listen. We're not perfect people. So
No,
we're
no.
stoked to be as honest and vulnerable as possible in this. And
Hmm.
uh, yeah, I think Jerry, I think you and I are pretty straight-laced people that what you see
Yeah,
is what you get. So we will not pretend to have all
right.
the answers. You've already said
Yeah.
that a couple times, but yeah, we're excited for people to journey with us, and
Mhm.
we our goal is to not waste your time,
Yeah, yeah,
but to have a conversation with,
yeah.
and I think it's gonna be great. So I'm
That's a
excited.
great way to put it. We should have started up at the beginning of this, but I think it's a good place to end. This podcast idea came from a gathering of, I don't know, there was like 10 to 12 of us, and we met in Kansas City. And the whole point of that very brief couple of days together was to talk about young adults and connecting with this young generation. And what does the conversation need to look like? So, Angie and I are really just kind of a couple of people out of a nationwide net of people who are super interested in encouraging and engaging with this young generation. So yeah, that was kind of the genesis of the Pivotal podcast. And the name came from the conviction that I have, and I think we both share, that we really are at a pivotal moment in our history, in the history of the church, in the history of our culture. How we engage the young generation is really going to be determinant of where we go next as a culture. Yeah, and where we go next as the body of Christ in America. So anyway, that was something I wanted to throw in because I think it just gives a little more of the background backstory. Well, Andrea, I love you dearly. I think you're fantastic. Anytime I say the name Andrea Sautel to anybody, everyone's like, "Oh, I love Andrea." So you have a
Listen, I
big,
feel the
huge
same way
fan
about
base.
you. So
I'm excited to walk this road with you and invite people along. So, all
like
right, friends,
people
thanks
more
for.
than just our parents, right?
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's right. My mom for sure. She's going to be
my dad
listening.
will totally be listening.
That's right. Yeah, I'm an only son. I'm total mama's boy. So yeah, I know we have at least one listener in Beverly. So yeah, she'll be with us.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody. Thanks for joining episode 1 of the Pivotal Podcast. And leave us a comment or a question or suggestion. And yeah, follow along. Thanks everyone.
See ya.
See you next time.